Hey everyone out there, my name is Travis. I'm the lead pastor of Relevant Life Church, and every once in a while, I just want to make these killer videos with my friend here.
Yeah, I'm Steven. I work with Pastor Travis.
Yeah, I want to make these videos as a resource to kind of have a conversation about what's happening in our world. How can we talk about current events? How can we get God's perspective? And so we don't have a name for our podcast yet, but this is the first time that we've done this. And honestly, what happened this week is I was online and I saw this post, and I saw then what happened was I saw a bunch of posts because it was like at the top of my news feed. And Stephen, you read the article about it. There's a local ice cream shop called the Freez. It used to be called Tasty Freeze. True story. I've been eating at this ice cream shop since 1999. My buddy used to work there. It's kind of an iconic place to eat ice cream in Moorhead, and has a lot of history. Like, it means a lot. Well, they were in the news. In fact, I couldn't believe how much traction these social media posts had. There were people from Europe commenting. There were people from all over the world commenting on kind of some outrage in our community about something that happened. And so you want to recap what you read?
Yeah, so as I understand it, essentially, the parents of their daughter who had worked there, they went out and posted their perspective on what had happened, that somebody had left a $100 tip. She told them they couldn't take it. She couldn't take it, but they left and drove away anyway. And then the employer was upset about accepting the tip because they're not supposed to accept big tips like that, and fired her daughter for it. And so that's, what the parents essentially posted, something like that. And then, as I understand it, that just kind of blew up. You kind of never know, right? Like, it could happen to anyone or anything, like what's going to happen to catch fire and get viral at just the right moment. But it seems like that kind of started to steamroll, and people were really upset about that, latched onto it. And then the owner of the Freeze responded, and people latched onto that, and just kind of both those things ended up getting to the point where now it's on the news. People are talking about this, and then more people go look into it, and they put their thoughts out there. And so it just kind of blew up, essentially this, I guess, accusation that, hey, my daughter was fired just for accepting a tip, and she's worked there for 5 years.
Yeah, and I think the part of me when I read this that I was kind of shocked. Well, one, I was shocked at how many shares, how much traction. I love our city. I love Fargo-Moorhead.
Mm-hmm.
This is not necessarily I want something to be known for on the map. Like,
Right.
that this is the city where the lady got fired for receiving a $100 tip. But the thing that blew me away was thousands. I'm talking thousands of comments on both of the posts. The post from the Freeze responding to what happened, the post from the parents of the employee sharing their perspective, and just, the outrage, and so through that process yesterday when I was thinking about this, I was like, I kind of was grieved. I was a little grieved, and I was also like, I know there's a better way. Like, there's a kingdom way. And so at our church, one of the things that we say what we're about, is we want to see God's kingdom here on earth as it is in heaven. Like when Jesus prayed that prayer, we want to see that a reality. So we want to see in Fargo-Moorhead the kingdom come to pass. We are striving to learn, what does that mean? If I'm a citizen in God's kingdom, what is my response? And so I kind of want us to talk a little bit to our city, but I also want us to talk to Christ followers, to people who say, I'm a follower of Jesus. And I think there's so much right now. I said we weren't going to use this phrase, but here it is. But, there's so much cancel culture. We saw the thing with John Lindell and Mark Driscoll happen. Like, we saw, there's a lot of, there's more of a willingness to just kind of blast people from a public platform, and it seems like people are attracted to that, and it feels like you're like either on this side or you're on that side. Like you're either for the Freez or you're for the employee. You're either for Driscoll or you're for John Lindell. And there's like, it feels like social media in general, and I don't think it's just social media, but it seems like people are wanting you to draw a conclusion and make a conclusion about something, and they want you to talk and they want you to say something. And I think there's a danger in that, and we can talk about the danger in that. But I just want to ask you a question, because you are not, Stephen, you are not someone who's on social media. Like, I don't know that you would have even known about this.
No, I didn't know about it till you brought it up.
Right.
Then I had to Google it and come across some local articles and kind of see what was going on.
Right. And I think there's something refreshing about that, in the sense of you don't have to be, if you're not on social media, you don't have to see the drama. There's probably a podcast in that we could talk about later. But I'm curious, because I do think this was not necessarily like, cancel culture was different for me growing up. We didn't have the platform of social media that we have now. I think more of like, our platform was music and video and different ways of how we kind of expressed what we were upset about or what was bothering us. But boy, it's different now. And so there's this element of this willingness to, let's dive into these topics and just share whatever we think about it. I'm curious, in the sense of like you growing up in that culture, and also you deciding, I don't necessarily want to be a part of that. Like, did you see, how do you feel like your generation in particular, why do you think people, and I don't even necessarily think it has to be a generational thing, why do you think people are responding this way? Why do you think people are more willing to let it all hang out and blast people and make people arrive to a conclusion and kind of force you to be one side or the other? Why do you think our society's in that place?
Yeah, well, I guess there's probably a lot of different like angles that you could take on it, or like directions that you could approach it from, because there's multiple things going on that kind of cause that. I don't think there's necessarily, I guess I don't know too much about like a generational element to it, but I think some of it is just like people are dissatisfied. Like people just have this sense, like we have, and this isn't new. This is part of the human condition. Like part of the world we live in, right? Like we know we live in a world where things aren't right. Not everything's right. There's a lot of things that are wrong, and so I think people feel this general like dissatisfaction that like something is wrong there, and I want to do something about it, or I'm just uncomfortable with some of the realities out there, that not everybody gets treated fairly. And I'm not even saying what happened or didn't happen in this situation, but just I think that people are ripe to get upset about something, because we have a general sense of like, man, I'm not happy with the way things are. And so then when we get an outlet for, and here's somebody I can blame for that, here's somebody, here's an opportunity for me to fight for the way things should be, or the way I think things should be, then I think it's an outlet for that dissatisfaction of like, it's just frustrating that, we just all have a sense that there's like, not everything is the way that it ought to be, and we don't like that. And it can be uncomfortable, especially if we don't feel like we know what the solution is or have a solution for it.
Yeah. And I don't want to spend a ton of time, because I do think it'd be so easy to just cancel people, like it'd be so easy to just go, and in some ways, like, you're perpetuating the problem. Like if you're just like, you losers get a clue. That's not the answer.
Right.
I do want to talk about the answer, like in the sense of, because I think there's a part of it that for me, when I saw this and read this, there's a few different themes in here. I do think it does come to a component of people want justice. People feel like there was something that, like, this employee was wronged. I had mentioned to you before, we were talking about accountability. Like, it's interesting because one of the things that happened in this is a bunch of people went and left Google reviews on this business. And I mean, from a business world, Google reviews are so important. They're incredibly important. And so maybe even someone that hadn't even been to the restaurant was responding this way. And so we could talk all day long about how some of this, I think it continues to perpetuate the problem. I don't know that it brings closure or brings a solution, but I do think there is this angst, there's this frustration, and I think there's also the question of how can we hold, like, who's gonna make this right, you know? And I think in this case, like, you could say from a business perspective, the Freez's response, you know, it's not my business, so I don't own it. I maybe wouldn't have responded the way that they responded and handled things the way, but nonetheless, they chose to respond that way. And then it almost was like a double down, like, oh, okay, now we're going to even say more because you said something stupid, or that's their perception. Like, you're not taking ownership, you're not taking responsibility, and so who's going to hold you accountable if you're not going to hold yourself accountable to what happened to this person? And so I think that part, like, so let's switch now and talk about how can we be kingdom people in this process, because I want to speak specifically to those that say they're Christians, to those that say they're followers of Jesus. I think there's a part of cancel culture and online outrage and all this element that, because it's somewhat of the norm, it's very much a normal thing to just say whatever you think or arrive to a conclusion. And sometimes I don't think we remember, like, I'm not of this world. Like, I am called to be I'm in this world, and God's using me for this world. Like, he's using me to reach this world, but I'm not to take my cues from how culture and how other people are responding to injustice or responding to the outrage. So how can we as kingdom people, and that's really what I just want to finish this conversation talking about, be a part of the solution? How can we represent Jesus and the gospel online, on social media? How can we help our community and our city be better? Because I do think God has a better way. And I do think that when it comes to accountability, in the sense of there's this desire to hold people accountable online, but I think we see in Scripture, Jesus is like, you got to be careful. You're trying to hold other people accountable for their sins and call out their sins, but we see this in the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus is saying, you need to deal with your sin. And I think we spend so much energy as a society focusing on the sins of others, the failures of others, and even from a public perspective, which is a whole nother, it adds this other component to it. We feel free to just publicly share about the failures and sins of other people. And as a kingdom person, I see Jesus saying, your responsibility is to deal with yourself and to deal with your sin. And so to me, that's one of the solutions is, what if we as kingdom people said, I'm going to focus on me and my stuff and my problems and my energy. My energy is going to go towards dealing with my heart as opposed to judging others or calling other people out. Do you think that that's a part of the solution? What are some of the other ways that you see we could be kingdom people for responding to things like this?
Yeah. Well, I think the first step is you got to have that filter uh, in the first place of how does a kingdom person respond to this? Meaning you have to actually be processing your decisions through that filter, right? And I think it's easy for us sometimes to forget about that in the heat of the moment or in our day to day, that a decision comes up, whether it's a financial decision, it's an interpersonal decision, it's a work decision, and are we processing that through, okay, how am I representing Jesus in this conversation, in this situation, in this decision? Am I processing it through what's the best decision for the kingdom of God, or am I just processing it through what's best for me, or what do I want to do, right? So I think step one is you have to actually, as Christians, we actually have to have the filter for our decision making. Oh, okay, boom, I see this thing coming up on my social media. Wow, I see this blowing up. And we have to put that through that initial question of what is the best way for me to respond as somebody who represents Jesus as my king. And then I think once we're thinking through that filter, a huge component of this, and a huge component really of, you mentioned the Sermon on the Mount and Jesus' teaching, is it's humility. And so we need to process it with humility. And this is a great test case for that, or a great example of that, because really all of us, myself included, yourself included, everyone who's commenting on it, we have so little of the full picture of this story, right? We don't know. And that's not saying, oh, the full story would show that the parents are wrong, the full story would show that the boss is wrong. We just don't know. That's what I'm saying, right? And so there has to be a humility that we have to come to terms with the fact that I don't have the full story here. And even when we think we have a lot of the story, we still need to challenge ourselves that, nope, we don't have the whole story. There's always more going on. In this case, we really don't have very much of the story at all. So that starting place of going, I need to pause and slow down and not assume that I understand what's happening here. Because Brene Brown talks about this, when we have an incomplete story, our brains, we want to complete the story, we want to complete the story loop, because it's more, there's just an anxiety, a tension when we don't know all the details because we don't fully know how to respond or how to process it. And so it's also something that the authors of Crucial Conversations talk about this, that we tell the rest of the story. Like, we tell it in our mind. We fill in the gaps. If you walk in the door and I wave at you and you walk right past me, there's a ton about what just happened that I don't know, but my mind's going to fill in the gaps. And my mind might fill in the gap with, oh, I bet he's on the phone in his headphone and he just didn't even see me. Or my mind might fill in the gaps with, oh man, Travis just doesn't even care about me and he's so frustrated right now that he doesn't even want to talk to me, right? Like, we can fill in the gaps in a lot of ways. And I think so just recognizing, okay, I might feel like I want to be upset initially. Oh man, she got fired for $100 tip. But then we need to ask the question, what's the story I'm telling myself? What are the gaps that I'm filling? And, then you start to realize, oh, okay, I'm telling myself the story that, this lady was just trying to be nice and there's nothing, this is actually what she was fired for. And there's the manager's just being controlling. And, there's all these different things about people's motives and what's going on behind the scenes that in order to complete the story, we have to make sense of. So I think there's that first step is humility of going, okay, I need to realize there could be 1,000 different things that are actually true here, and I don't have a clue which one it is. So I should be really careful about going out there and pronouncing judgment or saying anything really strongly or confidently as though I do know what the story is. And then what you add on to that humility is this second step of honor, which goes, okay, humility is I'm going to question my assumptions. I'm going to ask the question, what story am I telling myself? Then the second step of honor is I'm going to choose to assume the best.
Right. Yep.
I'm gonna tell myself a different story, and I'm gonna go, what's the best story I can tell myself about these parents? What's the best story I can tell myself about this daughter who got fired? What's the best story I can tell myself about this business owner? You're gonna start filling in the gaps intentionally to go, okay, what would be another possibility that's a much more generous and charitable, like, what could be the case. And it's not a naivety of like, oh, I just assume everyone's motives are pure, but it's just an honor piece of, I don't know that your motives are bad. I don't know that so I'm just, until proven otherwise, I'm going to treat you as though the details are what paints you in the best light.
Yeah. And I actually think too, that was really good, by the way. I think that there is an opportunity, like there's an opportunity here to actually present the gospel as opposed to present, like to be a part of the problem, like to be a part of, to perpetuate the problem, to continue the problem. And when I say the problem, I don't mean the business in general. I don't mean that the business is the problem, but I'm saying the problem of we are perpetuating disunity. We continue to feed this fire. We continue to find things to get ticked at. It's like, okay, I'm going to pick up my phone today and figure out what do I need to be mad about today, and it's like, so I think for me, while you were talking, I was also thinking about why do we care? Like, really, at the end of the day, I don't have enough emotional space to carry the weight of something that is out of my control. One, it's out of my control. And two, I don't need to place my energy there, my focus there. So when you're talking about that filter, like I need to filter it through humility. I need to filter it through honor. And I talked about, filtering it through the word in the sense of what does the Sermon on the Mount say? What does Jesus say that a follower of Jesus is supposed to act like, look like, be like? But I do think there's an opportunity here, and this is not just in this situation. I think in general, I love the term, and I can't remember who coined it. There's this term gospel fluency in the sense of we have to be fluent in bringing the gospel, the good news of who Jesus is, who the kingdom is, into everyday situations, like into our work situations, into our home situations. And this element of when I see these conversations, I think there's an opportunity to say, there's a better way. There's another way. Like Jesus has a different way. Like the thing that all of us did. Like I just had this thought when I was reading about these people, both sides. I just felt like, wow, your sins, your failures, they're being aired for everyone to see. And I was thinking to myself, like, how many of us would want all of our, our sins, our
Right.
problems, our issues to be aired on social media and for everyone to feel like they had the ability to speak to them or share their opinion about them? And I think that in that, it's like that energy that we're putting in that, it's like an energy on saying, you did this, you're wrong, you're a part of the problem of what's happening. And that energy is misplaced because it doesn't actually solve the real problem. It doesn't solve the issue. And so that's the part where it's like, if we put that energy towards how can we bring the gospel into this situation. And so for me, I think bringing the gospel into this situation, it already is like what you said, it's assuming the best. It's choosing not to, like, I'm not going to care about this the way the world is caring about this, because guess what? I need to focus on my dang marriage. Like,
Right.
I need to focus on my own devotional life and I need to read the word today, not get sucked into a debate on social media. And like, I need God's perspective. I need to work on my own and put energy towards, am I loving God? Am I loving people? And so that's why I say that opportunity for gospel fluency is like, I think we do have an opportunity to either be offended and continue to perpetuate the problem, or we have an opportunity to bring the gospel into that place.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're saying about how you're using your emotional energy is huge, because I do think that there can be a feeling that almost a pressure, a stress, like I have to I have to come to a conclusion about this, or I have to be a part of the solution. Like I feel an unrest about this situation, but then if I do something about it, I go and put my thoughts out there. Well, now I've done my part, so now I can maybe move on a little bit more, or maybe not, or maybe it's still frustrating you and you're following it, to see what's going to happen, or I need to see this person's Facebook reviews tank, so then I can feel satisfied that, that justice has been served, that something has happened to kind of settle this, just this frustration, this anger that something wrong happened. And it's like, I think that we can all benefit from just kind of releasing ourselves from that burden of like, I don't have the responsibility to solve this.
Mm-hmm.
There are some people who can speak to the process because that's their role. Hey, I'm your close friend. I'm on your board for your business, or I'm your overseer at work, whatever. There's people who do have some responsibility for this particular situation because it's within their realm of influence. But if I'm just a random homie on the street and I don't have any influence with these people, I don't have a personal relationship with them, I don't know them personally, have that investment in there where I have, the opportunity to speak into the situation, I don't have the responsibility, the burden on me to go, I have to figure out who's right and solve this. I have to be a part of this. I have to do something to solve this situation. Because we can't do everything, right? And that's part of the reality of like social media and just connectedness in general, is like in a more decentralized world where everybody can connect to everybody. Everybody can see all the information that's coming in, even just when it comes to bigger issues like Israel, Palestine, and
Mm-hmm.
Russia, Ukraine, and, just the things bigger, whatever. You can go to American politics or the protests that are happening and all that. Like, you see everything, you hear everything, everything's put in front of you. And so you can really just be overloaded by the stress and the anxiety of everything that's not right in the world. And, feel that there's a certain element of like, well, I have to do my part in this, or I'm a part of the problem. I'm negligent. And I think that all of us need to do some give ourselves permission to go, okay, what is God calling me to specifically? What is my role? What is my place of influence? What do I need to be focused on? And not get sucked into things that aren't feeding that, or aren't specifically, the things that God's put in front of you to be able to be, part of the solution for.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I was thinking a lot about purpose. Like as you were talking, I was thinking about how sometimes we get sucked into petty things. We get sucked into things that don't matter. We get sucked into petty things because we don't have purpose. Like we're not engaging in our purpose. We're engaging in something that actually distracts and hinders us from what we are called to do and what we are to be about. And so just kind of want to wrap up this conversation and just share a few like last thoughts. And I just want to encourage just people in general that if you find yourself having that anxiety or that angst or that feeling like you had said, I've got to solve this, I've got to make this right, I'm going to share this and it's going to help be a part of if you find yourself getting sucked into that, I think it's a trap. It's definitely a way that the enemy can bring distraction and division. If you find just want to say that is normal.
Right. Yeah.
That is absolutely normal. Like you're not a bad person but I think there is an opportunity to respond to this truth in our life. If we are a Jesus follower, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to get sucked into what's petty because I have a purpose that's greater than being a right fighter on the internet. you know, and I think that is where if we get a glimpse of that and a vision of that, then we can know that we are actually being a part of the solution by focusing on what God wants us to focus on, and being responsible for the thing that he put in front of us that day, as opposed to trying to fight every situation that's coming up. And so I think that energy and that focus is huge. And maybe, you know, if you've been a part of the problem in online, and you're like, I've been a troll. Come on, who hasn't been a troll? Like, I've been a part of the problem. I think it's a great opportunity to say, I'm going to stop. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be a part of the problem anymore. And, you know, speaking to our congregation in general, let's not do that. Let's be kingdom people. Let's be people that rise above that and respond the way that God does, and be gracious, humble, like Pastor Steven said, honoring. And so, dude, I've loved this. This was fun.
Yeah,
we should do more of these.
I'd love to.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
All right. You guys have a great rest of your week. Love you, fam.